right. Good morning, everybody. Excited to get to be here with you. I noticed the text said join Russ and Jason. Jason is currently either in New Zealand now or on a plane still on his way to New Zealand, which is more likely that's the case. But anyway, you get just me today, but I'm excited to be here with you guys and get to share some thoughts and things. So, but before we do that, any specific questions you guys have that you want me to cover before I get into what I want to talk about?
Hey Russ, I have a question.
Sure.
I have a potential client who lives in California. His brother lives here, and my California friend is the trustee over the estate for his brother who just passed away. And he made the comment that the neighbors had been so good to his brother. He's just like, I don't want to sell it to an investor. And so I just wondered, like, what do you do with a comment like that? Can a seller can I mean, how do you even go about that, or even can you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. At the end of the day, really, a seller can decide to accept an offer based on anything except for one of the protected classes. So Um, the hard part's going to be that is how do you know if they are an investor or not? And meaning somebody could come in and say, no, I'm buying it because I'm going to live there. And then
Hmm.
after they close, they could say, oh, I changed my mind. I'm going to now do that. So I just don't know how you would prove that they're going to do that. I don't think that an investor would be one of the protected classes. So you could discriminate against an investor and not
Hmm.
be violating fair housing. But I just don't know how you're going to know that without, well, I mean, unless they just are straight up honest with you that that's what their plan is. But somebody could
Okay.
just say, no, I'm not planning to, and then turn around and do it. There's really not a whole lot you could do.
A seller could do about that. Okay. I
Yeah,
was just, yeah, kind of what I thought. I just thought, oh, I don't even, I wasn't in the position or needing to at this point to address that.
sure.
So anyway, thank you for your insight
Yeah,
on that. I appreciate it.
you
Can
bet.
I
Great
add
question.
on this question?
Sure.
Because I've had some questions about this too. Um, like Galen was saying about the neighbors next door, I don't know if they wanted to put in an offer, but when you look at everything and the seller can choose who they want, but what if they want, like, well, I like these people and I don't know these other people. How can we as agents do the right thing, not say anything that will that we're not supposed to say? But do you understand what I mean? When someone like, oh, I have it on the market, but now I really want my friend, I want to accept an offer, and it's not, a better offer. We just like them more. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. So at the end of the day, again, like I was saying, a seller can accept any offer that they choose to, as long as they're not doing it based on any of the protected classes. Like if they're doing it based on the fact of, I know these people and I want them to have the house, there's nothing wrong with that. So there's no requirement, although there are agents that think there is. There's no requirement that the seller accept the highest offer. They can accept an they could accept an offer that maybe is less money, but they like the idea of when the person wants to close better because of the amount, or excuse me, because of the timing of the offer is maybe more important than the money, or like really, yeah, it as long as they're not accepting it based on, hey, I don't want this person that's in a protected class to have it. It could be for any reason of in terms of the terms of the contract. So am I saying that to where it makes sense?
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
So, but
I
yeah,
have
if it's just, hey, that's why people did those love letters all the time with their offers when there were multiple offer scenarios, is because they're wanting the seller to be like, oh, I like those people and I want them to to get it. And as long as it's based on not discriminating against somebody else, that's kind of the key. Is just, it could be, I just like the idea that they said they were going to leave my tree in the front yard and everybody else said they were going to tear it down. Like, they could accept an offer just based on that.
That's super helpful. Hey, I have one other one. Just
Sure.
We try to be good agents and even past clients and different things. Where's that balance in where someone, a past client calls you about, you're not under contract anymore, everything's finished, but they keep, wanting advice about the house or different things. What do we do to be a good agent and still, I don't know, maybe I'm not exactly how to phrase this. I don't, if I'm making myself clear, but I want to be helpful, but I don't want to get in the middle of all the stuff in their house. Do you know what?
Yeah. So do you have something like specific that they're asking you about?
No, I don't. Not right now. I actually have they were calling just as this meeting, but they had called and said, I have some questions, but I as past things have happened, it's generally more than just, it's ask the agent to ask the sellers this about the house, or you know what I mean? Those types of things. And we're really not in.
Gotcha. I think I do understand what you're saying now.
Thank you.
So yeah, I would say there's not an exact answer is probably the first thing I would say, but ultimately I think, help out a little bit here and there. But yeah, if they're constantly calling with, can you ask the seller this, or can you ask the seller that, there would come a point when it may make sense to talk to the other agent and just say, are you okay if I give my client your client's phone number and let's just get them connected and talking? Like, during the transaction, we don't want to do that, just because typically, well, a couple of reasons. One, you run the risk that the client says something that they shouldn't say, but also just it kind of keeping them at arm's length keeps the deal together a lot of times. Although there are times where maybe putting them together makes more sense, that would keep a deal together. But once it's closed, really, if it's a lot of questions, you may get to a point where you go, you know what, let me just get you connected with the seller directly so that you don't have to go through me to the agent to the seller. But that's kind of what I would say is really, you're going to have to probably just make that as a business decision of hey, look, I want to give good service, but at the same time, like, this is excessive. So anyway.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Russ, one more quick question about water shares.
Okay.
If a seller has a water share, then of course we note that on the MLS. But is there additional paperwork we do preliminarily, or is it just through title after, or what's that process?
Yeah, typically it's going to just be through title and working through the water company. I mean, I would say you want to just get the details as part of your seller disclosures to get all the information about it, but you're typically not going to have any other paperwork necessarily that you need to do. So,
okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, good questions. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. So let me bring this up. What I thought I would talk about, I had actually 2 questions yesterday, not exactly the same questions, but close enough to that I thought this probably would be a good thing to review. So a couple things that I'm going to review with you is just before closing. So in the real estate purchase contract here in section 11, and so I just want to talk about, in terms of like a couple of things to do prior to closing, and just prior to closing, and I guess I should say settlement, to make sure we're all meaning the right thing. So prior to settlement. So in section 11 here of the real estate purchase contract is final pre-settlement walkthrough inspection. So I want to read this to you and then we'll talk about it for a second. So no earlier than 7 calendar days prior to settlement, and upon reasonable notice and at a reasonable time, So the three things there so far is not earlier than 7 calendar days before settlement, and with reasonable notice and at a reasonable time. So the hard part with that is what's the definition of reasonable notice? But anyway, so with reasonable notice and at a reasonable time, the buyer may conduct a final pre-settlement walkthrough inspection of the property to determine only that the property is as represented, meaning that the items referenced in 1.1, so if you go back to section 1.1, all of those items that are listed there, anything in 1.2, which would be additional things you asked for, and 8.1B2, which 8.1B2 would be the section that's saying during our due diligence, we can go through and ask for the seller to make repairs to things. So the purpose of the walkthrough is just to check that those items are respectively present, repaired, or corrected as agreed. The failure to conduct a walkthrough inspection or to claim that an item is not as represented shall not constitute a waiver by the buyer of the right to receive on the date of possession the items as represented. So the two questions that I got yesterday regarding this, first one was an agent called and said, hey, the property was being rented to, and if I remember right, it was to like a family member, but the property was being rented to this family member. It's now before settlement. In fact, I think settlement was supposed to be this morning. The buyers went to do their final pre-settlement walkthrough inspection. They got there and it's trashed. Like the guy just left all kinds of junk behind. And there was a problem with some blinds or something. So that was the first one. It was saying, okay, so now what do we do? So the first question for you guys is, what do you do? And which, by the way, the seller is out of state. So it's not like the seller could go over and clean it up like from last night till this morning.
If you don't put some kind of a stop or a request at, you don't have any claim after, isn't that correct?
So yeah, good point. So I wouldn't say that you don't have any claim because, in fact, let me share the screen again here to point out just the one part that says the failure to conduct a walkthrough inspection or to claim that an item is not represented shall not constitute a waiver by the buyer of the right to receive on the date of possession the items as represented. So I would say it wouldn't necessarily change the fact that you couldn't deal with it. I think that the bigger issue is tied to the second scenario. So let me give you the second scenario that I got yesterday. The second scenario was an agent who had already closed on a property, called me and said, hey, we got a problem where the buyer's now in the house. There were some items that we asked for as part of our inspection to be completed, and the buyer now has moved in. The seller had sent pictures of, hey, here's the repairs, they're done. But then when the buyer got in there, looking at a picture, it does look like they're done. But when you went around, and it was some trim around doors and stuff, and they went and the trim was not put on very well. It's shoddy workmanship, and it was still loose. It wasn't secured. And so the agent was calling saying, okay, so what do we do? And my first question that I asked of the agent was, did you do a final pre-settlement walkthrough inspection before you went to settlement? And the agent said no, because, and I don't remember what the exact reason was, but basically we weren't concerned because the seller sent us pictures showing us that the work had been completed. So with that scenario, this is to me why I felt like it's good to talk about, is just had at this point, let me ask you guys, at this point, then what's the recourse that buyer has for the seller the seller's saying, one, I did the repair. The buyer's now just saying, yeah, but it's not done very well. And it's not even secured, the casings around the door. So what do they do? What can the buyer do?
Did they use the addendum on those things that they were supposed to repair? Because it has some information in there about that.
Good. Yes, they did.
So
was it go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the addendum that they used, was it like the resolution of due diligence where it's done by a qualified person to the, satisfaction of whatever? Was that part of it?
So yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I didn't actually look that up. I just had asked the agent the question last night when I talked to him on the phone. Was just asking the question of first off, was it something you had asked for as part of your due diligence? He said yes. So I didn't follow it up with which addendum did you use a blank addendum or did you use the resolution of due diligence? So I'd have to look that up. But let's say that they did. Any thoughts? Okay.
Hi there. It's Miranda. I just had a thought. Hi. Hopefully my Bluetooth holds here on my AirPods. I just wanted to say that what I've learned is that a line in your contract early on can really be a tail saver and a problem solver for you when you encounter something like this, such as, in the wording could be like, any pre-closing final walkthrough repairs need to be to buyers, re-inspected and approved by buyer in order to go to settlement, or something to that effect. Not that you would say those words, but just something to that idea, so that and then in addition to that, and if not, then what happens next. Either we automatically extend the contract until those repairs are made to buyer satisfaction and able to close, or buyer can back out and get a full refund of their earnest money. Like something early on that's built in that can address this as being like preemptive and a resolution up front. I think it's hugely helpful, because there's so many times that we run into, oh, I didn't see that coming. Shoot, now what? And that's hard. That's stressful.
Yeah. Well, and I think just that's where what Galen brought up, which is really the best idea is using that resolution of due diligence form, because it does say, I was just pulling it up while you were talking here, that the seller shall be responsible for completion of repairs by the settlement deadline unless otherwise agreed to in writing. Sellers shall, through contractors, complete the repairs to comply with applicable law, including governmental permit, inspection, and approvals. So the idea of that, though, is if it had been done by a contractor, now you have the ability at least to go back and say, okay, we want the contractor to come back out and fix this. So, but here's the challenge. Once we were to the point where that agent was there and he's then contacted the seller through their agent, and the agent is saying, no, the seller did the repairs, it's done, at that point, it becomes now a civil matter. And so the whole idea of really what my message today is, dealing with those things earlier on is going to be easier to get fixed and corrected than after closing. Because before closing, the buyer could just say, hey, don't record until we get this worked out, and you can get it worked out. Once you have funded and recorded and the seller's now got their money, sellers are more apt to say, hey, I did it, sorry, sue me. And unfortunately, that's the option, is you're going to have to then go to probably small claims court to get that worked out. So anyway, while I'm on that, the other piece that I wanted to talk about is in terms of before going to settlement is always make sure as well. So do your pre-settlement walkthrough is one. Two is make sure that you are reviewing the closing disclosures before settlement if you can, but for sure, if not, then while you're at least there at settlement, review those closing disclosures to make sure, do they have the 295 on there, or 495 or 5 or 695, whatever it is you're charging, making sure that is put on the closing disclosure, and make sure that the commission amount is right, whether it's based on gross or net. All of those things are so much easier to get fixed before it records than after the fact, because once we get that check here and then Brianna starts to process it and she notices, oh, the check is not for the amount that it was supposed to be because it was net versus gross, or vice versa. Just know it's so much easier for you getting your check quicker if those things are all checked beforehand to make sure gross versus net, the 295 or a 495. Also, in terms of for your client, making sure the home warranty's on there, making sure the amounts, just that's your main responsibility of settlement, is to be there and ensure that what was on the contract matches up with what's on the closing disclosure. And then again, like I said, just ensuring you can get paid quicker, making sure the numbers all match and line up. That way makes everybody's job a little smoother and you get paid quicker. So anyway, any other thoughts, questions on any of those things?
I do.
Yes, I just have a question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to ask about the walkthrough. I've had some, that we don't have any things that are being fixed. And some people say, well, what is this walkthrough for? Why, what am I doing? And I usually just say, it's just to make sure that the property's in the same condition as when we went under contract. But is it okay to say, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but I would always suggest a walkthrough? Do we always suggest a walkthrough if there's nothing they're concerned about?
I would, yes, I would recommend it, just because of exactly what happened last night with the other agent. Is they got there and the person had moved out, but there was just trash everywhere in the property. And so that's where I would just say to them, yes, I highly recommend you do it, because if we get there and we find out something's broken, there's gouges in the wall from them moving or something, like, moving related repair, or what's the word? Not repairs,
Damages.
moving related damage, then yeah, we want to be able to deal with it. So yes, I would say we do want to recommend it. Now, if they don't, this is one of those scenarios where, and not that this one's that big of a deal, but I think it's always a good idea when you have had some type of a conversation and you're saying, hey, I think it's a good idea to do this, and they don't do it, put something, I heard it referred to as the golden email, of just send an email, hey, this is just to verify that you have chosen not to do a final pre-settlement walkthrough. Now, like I said, the contract does say that it doesn't mean that the seller's not still responsible because you didn't do it. It just makes it easier to deal with it before the seller gets their money than after. So I would say, Chris, yeah, I think it is a good idea to recommend it for sure.
On the other side of this, where they go in and I always preface things, this is a quick walkthrough. We're just walking through, making sure that everything's the same. But I've still had some that take a long time and want to look at everything. What else can you do besides, I don't know, that they go into this mode of, oh, what about this and that? Even though I have prefaced in, what it is for. Any suggestions there?
Yeah, good. Yeah. So I think probably the best suggestion for that would be back during the due diligence timeframe, during their inspections, is making sure to let them know before your due diligence deadline, hey, after today, we can't, if we go and ask for something, they don't have to agree. They could just say, no, we're not doing it, and there's nothing we can do. So if you almost future pace them a little bit there, then when you go to that pre-settlement walkthrough, you can say, now, just a reminder, we're not doing another inspection. This is not to see if we can find things that maybe we should have asked for before. This is only to make sure it's in the same general condition and that any repairs we ask them to make have been completed. So, and then outside of that, yeah, you're still going to have some that are like, oh, could we go back and let's ask them to fix this or to change that or whatever. And you can say, well, I can ask, but per the contract, they don't have to do it.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, Miranda.
I was going to say thanks for reminding me about the quote unquote new form. I think is it the buyer's satisfaction of due diligence? What is it called again?
The resolution of due diligence.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that. New to me, and it's going to be really helpful. Helps to do all of those things that I was thinking of are important. So appreciate the reminder.
Yep. Yeah, and on that, it also has like the buyer's remedies if the repairs are unfinished, and so anyway, yeah, always better to use a form if there is one, because it is going to have that extra language in there that you want to have for your client's protection. So cool deal. Okay, any other questions, comments? All right. Well,
Always
hey,
appreciate all your help and knowledge. Have a great day.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you guys being here. Thanks, Galen. See you.
Thank you.